yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about the family work that you did?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not quite sure what kind of question. With a severely disturbed person like this, I tend to do a lot of family work. This family served not quite as a halfway house, but they really were looking after the mother after Daphne for that first year while she was separating from her extreme suicidality. With other parents, a lot of the people I see paradoxically are too sick for the hospital, at least the way hospitals are now, much too sick for halfway houses or three-quarter-way houses. So I tend to get the family to work as a halfway house for a period of crisis. And at times it's been life-saving. You know, and obviously there are family dynamics that have to be looked at and explored, and what person wants to be looked at and sequestered and kept in tow by their family. So there are lots of difficulties inherent in it, but you have to do the best you can considering what's available with these very, very disturbed people. Any other questions? Francoise?
Your great capacity to sustain challenge and aggression. When you described the...
I assume that's a compliment, okay.
Yes, it is. But do you notice at what time did she challenge you the most? Because just I quote one of my patients, when I get better, I get worse. Those moments where
Well, that's right, because as a person gives up a delusional reality, they get very, very suicidal. She most challenged me that time that she tried to kill herself in the hospital. I knew that she was very, very suicidal, and I put her on an extreme suicide watch, so she was being checked every 5 or 10 minutes. That's when it's most challenging and most dangerous. Because if a person has built up this wonderful, creative, internal life, very painful to give it up. I mean, that's the most difficult and challenging part of it. As far as the interaction with the patient, it's not challenging. It's wonderful. It's intense. It's interesting. If it's not, there's probably something going on in the transference, countertransference relationship which needs to be looked at. But the time that's most difficult and challenging for me is when someone gives up their delusional beliefs. Sometimes a person will give up a long-held delusional belief and have another delusion emerges. One person, this is a terrible case, terrible in that this person remained psychotic for 7 years before I saw her. She was hospitalized after her 3rd child, and she had an image of, after her 3rd child's birth, and had an image of 3 rats gnawing at her heart. As she gradually had to stay in the hospital, heavily medicated, and lost custody of her children, her husband, nice husband, divorced her because she was so disturbed. So then there's like 7 years of multiple psychiatrists, multiple hospitals, lots of halfway houses, every drug known to man at that time. This poor woman came in to see me, and I said, gee, look, I see that you had 3 rats gnawing at you. And I said the obvious thing again, well, what does that mean? Again, it's a terrible thing, but patients repeatedly say no psychiatrist ever asked them what it meant. So she didn't know. I said, well, you know, I was young. I said, 3 rats, you know, you got 3 kids, 3 rats gnawing at your heart. Maybe you miss your kids and you put it out there and they're coming back at you and it hurts so much and they seem like rats because they're constantly gnawing at you. Anyway, with that, over a period of time, she was able to get into what was really going on. And what was really going on was that since her father had died when she was 10, and she was 30 now, let's say, she had had her father with her in every conceivable kind of situation. No one else knew that her father was with her. But she'd pass a cup of coffee, she'd pass one to him in her creative imagining. So as we got into this, and again the same process of questioning and asking and inquiring, She gave up her father. That led to maybe a 2-day hospitalization because she was very suicidal. And then she, with her wonderful, marvelous creative capacity, was able to come up with another delusion. This time it was her 3 children constantly with her. So she told me this with a great deal of trepidation. I said, well, that's great. That's your way of saying you want to be back with your kids. That's why you have this. And within 2 weeks, not only had she given up the transient delusion of the 3 kids constantly with her, but she'd made contact with her kids, her former husband. They didn't remarry, but he was a loving, warm guy. He brought her back into their life. She went on to give up all delusions, have a couple of productive jobs and stuff like that. The terrible aspect of that is that nobody asked those simple questions or inquired, what does it mean? Instead, doctors, bless their beads, write down, patient is paranoid schizophrenic, has a delusion of 3 rats gnawing at her. Stelazine, Thorazine, whatever kinds of medicines are necessary. That's the treatment of it. And as Courtney made so amply clear, it's not the way to go. Yeah?
I'm wondering, I missed the first part of your talk, but do you find that...
I said the same thing over and over again.
Do you find that when you say you go to the roots of, when did this first happen, that you really saw this experience of these 2 lives, do you invariably find there's some kind of relational trauma or some...
Not a lot of the time, but not invariably. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've seen people who are holy people, they're spiritual people, and for their own pursuits, monkish pursuits, sadhu-like pursuits, they go off into an internal blissful reality. That's not a way of dealing with trauma. That's because they prefer that withdrawn, removed life to our life. In India, one person I had to hospitalize because this person had lost 40 to 50 pounds in an already thin person, because this person was in a hermetic retreat. So we had to do whatever we could to get him back. And I was thinking the whole time that we were force feeding him, we were doing everything else. I was thinking, here we are hospitalizing this guy. If he were in India, and he was very involved in Hindu philosophy, they'd be throwing garlands of flowers at him. They would revere him. They would be praying to him. And it was only gradually. Now this person is totally back in the world, having had this incredibly withdrawn retreat. The hospitals have changed. This is one of the few people I had to put in the hospital in the last quite a long number of years, but it was life-threatening what he was doing to himself. And hospitals have changed. I no longer had control over the patient in the hospital. So the reason he started to get better is that even though he was in this withdrawn state after he'd been medically taken care of, I was able to come up to him in the hospital and say, listen, you're not really under my control now. And these doctors think that you're a catatonic schizophrenic, and their idea of the treatment for you is shock treatment. So if you don't pull it together, they have another doctor coming in, and within 2 weeks they're going to give you shock treatment. He started to eat that very afternoon.
Like any really satisfying individual therapy session, you hate to end them. We could talk all day long, and I'm sure enjoy it a lot, but we need to wrap up.
Thank you.